Hey everybody, what is up? My name is Mackenzie.
And I'm Jonathan.
We are husband and wife, and together we are TerreDice Games.
And today we've got an interview with a game designer, but not just any game designer. This guy is... your father. No, that's not true. That's impossible. No, that is true. That's totally him.
It is very true. So, way back in the 90s, before we were even born, this little video game called Secret Agent was released to the world, and the sole programmer on that video game was Jonathan's dad. Why are we talking about Secret Agent today? Well, 2 weeks ago, Secret Agent by Apogee Games just had a re-release over on Steam in HD, and we're going to tell you all about it. And Petter agreed to come on the channel with us and talk to us about game design and about what it was like back then.
So let's hop on into this interview.
Hey Petter, good to see you. Petter. Oh hey.
Hey guys, how are you? It's great to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Sure. No, this is wonderful.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know and didn't see from the thumbnail and the title and all the hype we got going there, this is my dad, Petter, and so we actually brought him on our channel because something really exciting happened. This game from the 90s that is coming back in style was just released as an HD version on Steam, and the original was programmed by my dad.
So do you want to tell us like what's different in this Secret Agent that just came out?
Well, first off, Secret Agent HD that just released on Steam and by Apogee did not require 2 years of nights and weekends of me coding it, as an awesome developer, Primos, went and actually built this remake. And so the first thing is I actually got to sleep and I got to have the fun of this launch, as opposed to what was lots of long nights and lots of Mountain Dew.
So what is different about this new Secret Agent?
Yeah, so I got to tell you, it's been a lot of fun to go back and play. 29 and a half years later after Secret Agent launched, there is now 4 episodes. So in the beginning, you would go, and it was in the freeware days, you'd get the free one off a bulletin board, play about 15 levels. If you mastered that, send off your $30 and get 2 more sets of episodes. They've added a 4th one. And in that 4th one, not only does Secret Agent continue with his super speed sneakers and his glasses to see invisible levels, but they added jetpacks, they added scuba gear, and they even entered and created a hidden level with a boss. And so kind of all the things you'd expect from kind of your 80s and 90s platformer side scroller kind of coming out. And so it's been a blast to kind of not only revisit, but get to see all kinds of new effects.
Very cool.
That was awesome.
What would you say is like how does it feel? Does it feel like the original Secret Agent? How did the new additions feel?
I think the new additions not only fit in, but they really went and played to the story, tying in a lot of the elements. We picked up where kind of Dr. Nobody and DVS, the Diabolical Villain Society, left off. And it really got to cap it off, because at the end of episode 3, there was kind of that lingering cliffhanger, like what's next? And so in many ways, we got to pick it up and play through the rest of that and get to an incredible special ending that I won't kind of go and give away right now, but lots of fun.
Now, I think we should probably mention early on, but we are going to have a Steam giveaway. We're going to have some keys to give away on our channel, so we'll be putting that in the description and the comments, but just wanted to make everybody aware you may have a chance to play this game for free.
Let's go back and talk about the original, all right? So this is the new re-release, but let's go back in time. And so what was the idea for Secret Agent? Can you take us back, like how did this come to be, and what was the idea for the game, and how did you start developing it?
Yeah, so if you go way back, the idea was really kind of take in high-end graphics that at the time weren't really on a lot of the PCs, where you got full screen panning and motion. Many of the games were one screen just stayed there, and so a lot of the technology into the engine were such that you could actually have that full screen panning, because that was a lot of trickery within the video card, and that was kind of the world that I did, so that there was things hidden off screen. You know, as you go to the right, stuff would appear you'd have shots fired at you, you'd have other areas. And so the goal was to have these fun levels where you couldn't see the whole level until you kind of moved around. You didn't know how many bullets to kind of save up. You didn't know if you're going the right way, the left way, making sure you weren't getting stuck. But that was part of it, is to have this mysterious 3/4 of the game you couldn't see when you started the level.
And so that was like brand new for this time, correct? Like the unknown.
You would have it at the arcades, and so you'd go to the arcades, but the PCs of the day, it was all you could do to keep up frame rate, to be able to go get these things. We were trying to go and get, I don't know, maybe 5-10 page type pieces a second if you could, and get it so that all the machines could get there. And so that was really kind of the whole notion of it. And that was actually how I even met the Apogee folks, was writing a lot of that code that then we ended up using under 5 or 6 of the games to be able to get the full screen panning.
Awesome. So did you originally come up with the idea for Secret Agent?
Yeah, Secret Agent was my title, kind of my idea. It was always kind of that fun thing, playing around. I'd had a few other kind of titles in that early in the 70s that kind of did a bit of that level-based running around, and even in the early 80s on some other pre-PC platforms, had some of those that had the running around. But the notion was we wanted to go and have Secret Agent 006.5. Let's go fight Devious and go figure out his way through it. And so that was kind of my title. Each of the authors kind of had her own gameplay, and we went from there.
Oh, that's awesome. So I guess my question is, so you said there are other authors, so how did you go about developing each level, or what was going to happen in the storyline of the game?
So I think this is one of the funny things, is you come up with a game, you come up with a character, you come up with what's happening. Kind of the storyline was really per episode. So in kind of the first episode, you're trying to get through and hunt for Red Rock Rover. You make your way going after Dr. Nobody in a progression. And so the story was predominantly at the episode level. Each of the levels were kind of standalone. You had to get in, collect all the letter codes, spell SPY, find the secret things, make your way. Some of the levels on the island, until you finished them, you couldn't progress and get to the other levels, and so it was a bit of a maze. And so it was really kind of a progression, and the levels got a bit harder. But each level was on their own. At the same time, trying to go make like 45 levels, that was the thing that just took like a year, because once you kind of got the game, once you got this, how do you really be creative enough to make 45 completely different games? All
each
exciting.
level is different.
And so that was really, in my case, what took the time.
Yeah, each level is different. And also, the way that you have to panning so you don't see everything is part of what makes it so challenging, because you go jump off something and not realize there was a spike going up and down there and things like that. I gotta tell you, we played the first 2 episodes, or the first 2 levels of the first episode for quite a while before we were able to get the hang of it.
Yeah,
just
well, you used
stuck.
to play it a lot as a kid, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so we had a copy of the original Secret Agent, and we would play it at home, and that was a whole lot of fun. But I don't remember being so bad at it. I think that's a new thing.
I don't remember being so bad at it, and I can tell you 29.5 years later, I'm bad at it.
Yeah. So I guess, how long did it take you to start to finish? What was the time frame on designing Secret Agent?
Secret Agent took almost 2 years. Part of it is, if you go look, Secret Agent actually came out after other titles like Crystal Caves that started much later, that used some of the same engine, the same code, level editors. But because it took me so long while working, and so I was working full time, and so it was nights and weekends. While it should have come out in probably early 1991, it did not ship until February of 92, just because of how long it took to complete up the levels.
And so talking about bringing it into development, I think that's something people would find really interesting. How was publishing it different back then, or what was that experience like with you publishing the game back then?
Yeah, so this was kind of what was really special about it, and even ties into now, is as a developer, you would normally write a game, maybe you could go put it up onto a bulletin board, but there wasn't really a way of monetizing, because games at home, other than the few cartridges of Segas and things like that, wasn't really a thing you could sell. There was no stores. You didn't have kind of the current high-tech stores of the day. Apogee came around, and they had actually found me because they wanted to buy the engine that I wrote, Pro Graphics Toolbox, to write games, to help them write some other ones. And they had this unique model where they would upload it to the bulletin board. You as an author would keep all the rights to it. And then as people paid for the second, third episode, they would ship them the floppy disk, and I'd get half of the money. And so they were the first to do that and really helped revolutionize shareware in the first of all those indie games. And by the mid-90s, you started having computer stores, Circuit City, Eggheads, all these other ones that we don't even see anymore, started having box software. But that was really the first way that you as an independent publisher could, when if you look at it, you've got things like we were doing our own little cut sheets, that we'd go print, and we'd go and have pieces of paper of cheat codes, and that's what you'd mail. And literally, I know Terry, who's the CEO of the new Apogee Entertainment that's publishing, he was printing labels and copying floppy disks and mailing them out. That was almost 30 years ago. And so it's come quite a long way from Steam distribution, downloading off the internet, and kind of having all the cloud-based libraries.
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, and Steam, that's been a part of like my life for several years now. That's the way you get games. You go online, you buy them, you download them, and you have it in 5 seconds. It's this instant gratification. You're not waiting for something in the mail.
Yeah, here's our old Steam. Yeah. We get you the floppy disk. Here's a Secret Agent floppy in that from one of our special distributions. Where that was how somebody went and did it. And what's fun is, you go back, you see the old school floppies. I don't even think a lot of people recognize the 3.5 inch. That wasn't even the floppies of the day, but that was distribution.
Tell us, was Secret Agent the only game that you created, or were there other things that you were working on? What were some other ideas that you had or things that you started to develop?
Yeah, so Secret Agent was probably game number 6 or 7 that were kind of a major title getting published. I had started in college. Remark magazine was the magazine of the Zenith 100 computer, something long since gone before. And I'd had audiovisual entertainment software, and we made little catalogs of games. And so there was 4 of them there that made to kind of their Christmas 1987 issue. There was always kind of a game in development. And if you look at the Pro Graphics Toolbox, which is what kind of the Apogee guys got, there was this little graphic of a choplifter game. So if you think of flying a little helicopter or doing that. And so I'd always had a lot of titles like that. As Secret Agent came along, that was just the next. And then as I was finishing up Secret Agent, that was the cut over to the 3D world. So actually the next set of games were actually starting to be these 3D ones where you're kind of walking first person, getting to see some of these weird characters. And so I was working on a title called Millennium Warrior, a title that never saw the light of day, as I ended up going off doing a venture-backed startup to do more kind of children's title that did have some 2D, 3D in it. But that was really the next set, is I was expecting to go off building 3D first-person games.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's like Duke Nukem and that style, right?
Yeah, well, actually, Duke Nukem used the Pro Graphics engine, the same as Secret Agent for version 1, which was a side shooter type piece. And then as it progressed during the years, it pivoted within that as a series of games.
Very cool.
But you started seeing those. At the time, there was the id guys who had everything from Commander Keen, but Doom, and kind of all the different titles that they did. They were part of Apogee, but the whole thing was nobody could use their software engine except for them. And so that's where I tried to be the guy to go enable everybody else to write games.
So you mentioned that you went off and did children's software. We actually were talking about this the other day. The name of that was TerreGlyph, which our channel's name is TerreDice. So it's kind of funny the play on words with the
Which we didn't even think about
there.
when we named it, but it was funny how it ran in the family.
Yeah. But that was very cool. So what did you do? Can you tell us a little bit about what you did at TerreGlyph?
Yeah, so TerreGlyph, I ran engineering and production, and that was one that was really neat because we had traditionally trained classic animators. So we actually, like cartoons, drew kind of feature film quality animation. We did Buster and the Beanstalk with the little baby Looney Tunes, Tiny Toons characters. That led me to get to meet Steven Spielberg and Jeffrey Katzenberg and the folks, and we had to have the real voice actors come into our studio. We did Kid Songs titled, that was like a little show, and then we did things like Hansel and Gretel and Rumpelstiltskin type titles, but they were kind of TV, kind of Saturday morning cartoon animation, but games as you kind of had an adventure running around doing them.
Oh, that's so cool. Did you get to play those games?
Oh yeah, I played those games a lot. Yeah, they were very, very cool. There's all these games where you basically have these scenes and they're really cinematic, and then you click and your character runs to the next scene, and there's a lot of stuff to do in them. They were fun. It's if you picture like Freddy Fish or Pajama Sam or like that style of games, it's like that. Yeah.
Oh, come on now. They were the competitors. So Freddy Fish and Pajama Sam. Now, not to say that I didn't buy them for you, but that was fun. But that was gaming in the mid 90s, and that's what led me to being able to go to the first E3 as it split off from the Consumer Electronics Show. And I think that's where you remember as a kid getting to see the stuff about Jake the Robot and our 3-story castle out there in the convention center. In
Yeah,
LA,
they had a talking robot that like would talk to people as they went by.
So we've talked a lot about video gaming, but that actually wasn't your like first introduction or what you were only involved with gaming. And actually it started much closer to what we focus on our channel, which is board games, and more specifically Dungeons and Dragons. And now can you tell us more about what your experience was in D&D?
Yeah, so if you think Secret Agent was kind of the late stage of my gaming in the 90s, and you go way back to the 70s, this is Dungeons and Dragons as I know it. As it first came out when I was a kid, and you got little manuals like this that were the game. And as you can see here, Gary Gygax signing that. So, but back in those days.
Show that again. You just like brushed over that.
What? You mean you can't just throw that in there? So this
I can't.
This is his. I will tell you that this was probably the third time that he signed something, as that was not until Gen Con 19. Whereas kind of my earlier ones were, of course, AD&D Advanced, where we had the complexity. So you had to go be able to play that. And that's where in the early 90s got to go play where Gary Gygax was our dungeon master, both at college as well as at, looks like Gen Con 15. Because back then, game designers were like you all, where we could actually get to know one another. Not some of these big, massive kind of corporations where there's hundreds and hundreds of people doing it. He was a really cool guy that lived 35 miles away from us in southern Wisconsin, as they were out of Lake Geneva, and you got to go hang out and play games. And that's where you learn strategy, is real board games.
Can you say who he is, just in case some people on our channel don't know? Yeah,
so for those who do not know, Gary Gygax, as you can see even on the box set of the first edition of the Dungeons & Dragons, his name, he is the designer of Dungeons & Dragons. And he was the one that went off and created all the way what led to TSR Games in Lake Geneva. And they opened a little gaming store selling miniatures the whole bit. But I think he started Gen Con in probably 1968, when I was way too little to go to that. But it was in full swing by the time I started getting to attend.
That's so cool. What was it like for him to be your dungeon master? Do you remember?
Yeah. So the best time was the time he signed it in 1982 at Beloit College, and he had actually came and made an investment in the university, or in the college at the time. And there was a group of us in our Beloit College Science Fiction and Fantasy Association that I wasn't yet in college at the time, but hanging out with the college students. And we had a coffee house-like place that then just sitting around a table, and he was a dungeon master, but he would tell stories, and you could just imagine the room. Today we have so many visual aids on the board, with all the manuals, with all the artwork. But back then, it was kind of rule sets, and it was the storytelling of the dungeon master that made you go away to that faraway land. And that was the thing that I remember, is just how you could visualize the environment, the challenge, the mission, the wilderness, everything he described, because it was from his storytelling, not from a visual aid.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
That's so cool. And you had miniature, right? Like, who was your character? I think you brought it.
So I usually was a wizard of sorts. I usually like playing those because of all the spells. But I got really into doing the miniatures, painting the little miniatures, playing with them. Yeah, just as that was always the thing, trying to mold them and cast them, make your own. In the early days, there wasn't a lot of them. And so trying to be creative, which way you could do that. And so that was always fun, is if you could actually play and have miniatures so that you could start to visualize it as you walk through a dungeon.
Now, when do you think you painted that one? What year was that?
This probably would have been the early Gen Cons and the rest. So this would probably been early 80s. Maybe I was like anywhere from 12 to 16, 17 years old. Yeah, somewhere in kind of that era.
That's awesome.
Very cool.
And speaking of Gen Con, what was it like back then in some of the early Gen Cons?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So one, Gen Cons were generally in southern Wisconsin at, like I recall, universities. I tried to remember where it was, and I think I looked up online, and it was like UW Parkside or that. But what I remember is in the hallways of a college campus. My most vivid memory was they had a really cool glass walkway between a couple of the buildings and a bunch of tables. And when I got to run a couple of games, because you'd get to apply to be like your own game master, and you'd write kind of your own level, or dungeon, and play that. And it was like 6-8 people sitting around a table, and you just look and you'd see like another 50 tables like that with 6 to 8 people just playing. But it felt like you were going to a college campus, having a great one. And then over time, it would slowly get bigger and bigger. You get kind of some of the convention halls, people selling, kind of extra copies of books or kind of the level guides and some of the other games. And so it was like little game stores setting it up in the halls. But it was a lot of fun because it was really just the purity of playing the games.
That's awesome.
Now, did you stick to D&D at the Gen Con, or you remember playing any other games there?
No, so Gen Con was interesting. You would have a track. You'd have a track of Dungeons and Dragons, but there was other games, and people would try things. So much like you're getting to constantly test new games, I do remember people playing different games, as well as there was other sets of games that we'd all play. So like I used to play a lot of the Steve Jackson games, so Car Wars and Champions. So Champions was like D&D, but you were a superhero. And I remember having this little, kind of guy who would run really fast and shoot some meteorites. And then you would have Car Wars. You'd have cars that they'd have hit point and damage, and it was kind of like playing Mad Max, but the car was your character. And so I do remember playing both Champions and Car Wars there. Those were similar types. I don't remember traditional board games as much, where you had kind of big layouts. A lot of them were character sheets and kind of more that role-playing kind of in your mind with a person kind of running you through a scenario.
That's so cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, Steve Jackson, a lot of people still play Steve Jackson games, like Munchkin is a really big one a lot of people know about still today.
It's fun. And I think what's neat from kind of just getting to play those games was, one, kind of the purity of them, and also just you had a few designers who just really went to that nth degree, where then you'd get hundreds of thousands of people kind of playing. Today it seems like you're bouncing from game to game. Back then, you'd be even playing a game as a group. Every Saturday night, we'd get together and play, and it'd be a group playing the same game and the same experience and journey for a year at a time. And so you really got to get into the layers of it, and that's where when you started looking through like all the handbooks of like D&D, it'd be all in probably 10 pounds of 7 different books and all the sheets, and you'd be like figuring out every week, oh, I didn't know how that worked, and you'd be turning to some level or figuring out about some character. And so it was always experience it in a new way.
That's
every
so
week.
Cool.
Very cool.
And I guess jumping out of board games for a second, as we are starting to wrap up this interview, is there anything that you would want to give as advice to any aspiring video game designers or programmers out there?
Yeah, so I would say I was one of those where I had the beauty of going to the arcade and studying. I would go to the arcades and bring a sheet of graph paper and draw what the characters look like, study these games. And so I would say the neatest thing you have today is you even have things like Minecraft and others is study games to learn kind of what they're doing so that you can kind of figure out how they build a plot. How are they doing movement? You know, where is the risk? What is the number of concurrent things happening? If you think of Secret Agent, you're trying to collect the letter spy. You're trying to go get a floppy disk to turn off a laser. You're trying to then go make sure you saved up enough ammunition. You start getting 2 and 3 concurrent sets of things you're trying to do. And that was what really you learned from these other games is you weren't just doing one thing to the next. You were trying to watch each of those. And so I think it's just start studying, start designing, and start playing, and just learn yourself, build your own style.
Awesome. So with the re-release of Secret Agent as your game coming out, what are your hopes for this game? Like, what are your aspirations for it as it's coming back onto Steam and more people and a new generation of players get to see it?
Well, one, Secret Agent being re-released in HD, I'm hoping that there's a whole new generation who actually can fall in love with it again. As I think it's a really fun game, a great game for on the go and being able to play in 10 minutes or be able to play for 4 hours. And so one, it's really that a new generation learns to love it. The second is they've opened up something that was never in Secret Agent, which is a level editor and the ability to play other people's levels and create new games. So much like you asked about how can people learn how to become a game designer, one of the great things is the new Secret Agent HD allows any kid or adult to go and become their own designer of a level, share that with friends, and I'm hoping to be able to go explore a whole new world of new designers. And then furthermore, I hope there's something that follows on. You mentioned some of the other titles. They got follow-ons, just like we have episode 4. Maybe we get a follow-on on a different platform like a Switch. Maybe we get a different follow-on of maybe Secret Agent goes 3D. Hopefully there's more for him after 29 and a half years all of a sudden coming out with a whole new part of this adventure.
And then what do you think? Any programming,
Lots to see.
video game programming for you in the future? Any more Secret Agent levels from you?
Well, for one, given that the level editor allows me to go create some, definitely foresee building some new levels for Secret Agent, getting my own little twist onto those, as that will definitely be fun. As far as programming, may pick that up, play with that on some of these, maybe just design some new cool look and feel. But definitely it re-inspires the old coding chops.
That's so cool. And Jonathan, what do you think about your dad having Secret Agent re-released?
Oh, I think it's really, really exciting. It's so cool. I played this game a lot growing up when I was like little, and it's just really exciting to see it coming back and doing something else. I know it's got to be really, really exciting for you too, but I'm pumped about it. It's awesome.
All right, Petter, thank you so much for spending time with us. It was really awesome to be able to talk to you about Secret Agent. And everyone, don't forget, we are leaving some information in the description down below on how we're going to be giving away these keys so you can go check out Secret Agent over on Steam. And we'll also leave a link to Steam where you can go and check out Secret Agent for yourself. I'm Mackenzie.
I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Petter, and this has been TerreDice Games.
Happy playing!